All right, it's time. Recon 1 has been dialed and tested in stock form, and today things are about to change. I've been waiting for this one. Not just a lift, but the transformation of Recon 1. Today, I'm gonna head over to Shift Auto Works and we're gonna install what's inside this box, then come back here in the garage and do one more upgrade, and then we're heading back out to Truck Haven to test to see where Recon 1 sits. Did we just lift it, or will we actually make it perform better out on the trail? So we'll do some good measurements out there. This is Recon 1 Phase 2.
Over the years, I've installed several lifts on Jeeps, and with the right tools, some time, and help from my sons or a few friends, it's something that can easily be done in a weekend. However, I'm getting a little older, and time is a little bit more of a commodity these days, and it's nice to have some professionals do it. So, with the help of my good friends over at Shift Auto, we're going to be knocking out this lift in quick order. This lift kit is the Jeep Performance 2-inch lift with Bilstein remote reservoir shocks. For this phase of the build, this is the perfect lift. Now, this is a kit you can get installed at just about any Jeep dealership, and they'll likely cover it under warranty. So for someone's daily driver, this is a solid option. Plus, we're not breaking the bank like you might with some other lifts. This is a great setup that's going to give us some excellent performance gains, but there will be a time when things get a little more extreme with Recon 1, but now isn't that time. This lift kit has just what you need and nothing you don't. There are springs front and rear. You got all 4 shocks, extended sway bars, front control arms, and everything needed to make this look like it came straight from the factory on this Jeep. One thing to point out while it's on the lift, this Jeep was very clean when I got it, and it didn't have any bumps or scrapes on the undercarriage. But you can see here, I've really been giving these skid plates a workout over the last few months. It's been a lot of fun, but we've scraped it up pretty good.
Well, it's been 2 weeks since Shift Auto installed that, and a huge thanks to them for helping me out. And I said in the beginning there was a couple other things we were going to do besides the lift. So before we get into how it's been driving over the last 2 weeks and what the measurements were and all the testing, I got to talk about the things that I also did. And so we put in a front Bilstein stabilizer. It's actually one of AEV's one, and that's going to help us when we put bigger tires on there to keep the steering wheel nice and firm and make sure we're tracking true down the road and don't get any death wobble. That was a necessary upgrade. And then the big one, guys, it was time to step up in tire size. So I installed some Milestar Patagonia XT tires. These are a 35 by 12.5 R17 tire. It's important to mention that these tires are dramatically heavier than the other ones, and that's affected Recon 1's braking and acceleration. It's definitely noticeable, and I expected that. Now, Recon 1 has stock gears that are 373s. It would be nice to have some 410s, but I think eventually we're going to have to upgrade the gearing ratio to meet the needs for these tires and the tires that are to come. These are heavier for sure, but the good news is that they're quiet on the road and it tracks true. Now, gas mileage took a little bit of a hit, but not dramatically. It's kind of what you would expect from going to a 35-inch tire. But I'm pretty happy with these so far. And we'll see here in a minute how they performed when I was out on the dirt. Now, I did not install these tires on stock rims. These are the Mopar Jeep Performance simulated beadlock wheels. And I got the simulated beadlocks because we're in phase 2 of Recon 1's build. And I think a full-on beadlock is maybe that's something that can come much later in the process. Right now, we need to keep this drivable, and we don't need a really expensive rim. And the price of a full beadlock versus a simulated beadlock, well, that's several $100s per wheel. These per wheel are still a little pricey, but man, they look good. And what this does is it gives us a wider wheel, so we can put that wider tire on there. Plus, it gives us a little bit of offset. So the tires are pushed out a little bit further. They're sticking out a little bit more from those fenders, but man, they look good and it rides nice. And we just need a little wider wheel. So there you have it. So now we're lifted and we got bigger tires, and it's starting to really look like a proper Jeep, guys, if I'm being honest. It's been fun wheeling it in stock form, but every time I look at it, I'm like, it just needs a little lift and a little bigger tire, and we're there. Now, let's talk about how things have gone over the last 2 weeks. So driving Recon 1 around has been great. I notice the weight of those tires when I'm going up a hill or when I'm stopping for a break, but driving down the road, it tracks perfect. I don't feel like I'm sloppy. In fact, the ride is probably a little stiffer than stock, and I'm okay with that. I don't feel like my Jeep's feeling like a little bit of a boat. And when I'm driving down the freeway, we're doing 65, 70 miles an hour, and you come to those little dips in the freeway, this soaks it up really well. The shocks that they have tuned for this are spot on. Off-road, I've only just done a little bit of off-roading when we did the testing, so more to follow on how well it performs off-road, but let's talk about the numbers, and I think you're going to be pretty surprised about how things came out. So if you remember, this is a 2-inch Mopar lift. Well, we got a little bit more than a 2-inch lift. Here are the raw numbers from when we measured things stock, and then this is how we are now sitting today, a little bit taller.
When I first got the Jeep, I took some baseline measurements. The center line, the rear fender, the front fender, and the differential. Now with the new lift and tires, the increase I got was surprising. At the center line, I'm now 21.5 inches, 42 inches at the rear fender, 41 inches at the front fender, and 11.5 inches at the differential.
So if you do the math, and you subtract for the tire increase, we got over 3 inches of lift on Recon 1. I'm not mad about that. I'm actually pretty happy about that. But some people may only want a 2-inch lift, and that's something that they're going to have to consider. Now, I think the reason that we got so much lift out of a 2-inch lift is because Recon 1 is a pretty basic Jeep. It does not have a lot of options, plus it has a soft top. I would wager that if Recon 1 was a Rubicon model with all the options and the hard top, that would be an extra 300 plus pounds, and that would probably settle that lift a little bit, so it wouldn't be quite so high. But I'm okay with this because, well, we're gonna need all the clearance we can get on some of these trails we're gonna hit here soon. Next, let's talk about some of the testing. So if you remember when Recon 1 was stock, we went out to Truck Haven and we did all the flex test and we banged it up and we hit some rocks. Well, I went back out there, the 35s in the lift, and well, here's the differences.
First up is the flex ramp. Now, this isn't an official ramp, it's just a raw one out here at Truck Haven. I marked where I was able to get up the first 2 times I was out here when I was stock. The first marker is when the sway bars were connected, and the second one is where they were disconnected. And now with the lift and tires, and yes, I did disconnect the sway bars today, I was able to climb up dramatically higher. But more important, my passenger tire was still on the ground. And that means going forward, I'll be able to keep all 4 wheels in contact with the ground longer when navigating difficult obstacles. There was one thing, however, that I noted during my inspection of the Flex. Both my front and rear tires were stuffed way too deep and rubbing the fenders. But that's okay. I've got a fix for that we'll talk about later. Next up is the tubular obstacle, and, well, I didn't have an easy go of this the first time.
Oh, okay. Scraping, grinding. Little scrape there on something. Oh, a little more scrape.
Now today, with all this added clearance, I didn't scrape once going over these obstacles, and the Jeep just felt more stable and easier to navigate with these larger tires. You know what they say, larger tires make for smaller holes, and that was the case here. Another win for these upgrades. Next was the waterfall, where I tested my departure and my approach angle. I struggled trying to reverse up this as my trailer hitch got hung up pretty good. But you can see now it was no problem. In fact, I could have kept going a bit more, but honestly, it felt a little uncomfortable facing straight down at that angle. My approach angle when stock was actually impressive, and I climbed all the way to the top no problem. But with the lift and these tires, you can see my front bumper is much further away from the rock face. I think one day when I'm putting 37s on here, I might be able to climb up and over an obstacle like this. Next is the log obstacle, and I assumed when I was stocked that this would be no big deal, but I did scrape the frame on the backside. Of course now, Recon 1 made easy work of this, no problems here. This is the whoop section, and in stock form, Recon 1 honestly had no problems in here. But with the lift and tires, it's even easier because the Jeep just feels more level, which is confidence inspiring. Now, lastly is the hill climb. This is steep, and I struggled with the smaller tires and almost thought I wasn't going to make it, but I was able to throttle out and worked my way up. Now, well, I had all the traction I needed with these tires, so a big win here.
I left Truck Haven with the biggest smile on my face. I'm so happy with the new performance that we've gained with Recon 1, and I absolutely love how it looks right now. The one limiting factor after doing that test is the tire rub that we got at full flex. So smashing those tires into the fenders, that's not ideal. I don't want to rip off a fender when I'm out on the trail. I mean, it's not a huge problem. They're actually pretty easy to put back on, but I don't want to do that. And so I've already got a solution. There's a box in the garage with a brand new set of fenders that are going to give us all the clearance we need. And we'll be talking more about that here soon because I've got some other things that we'll be installing as well. This is a sway bar disconnect, electronic sway bar disconnect from a Jeep Rubicon. This is a used takeoff, and I'm not going to be installing it just like this. We're going to make some changes to it that are going to make it easy for us to disconnect the sway bar, so I'm not under there with two 18mm wrenches anymore. Plus, I've got some armor that's going to be much needed. I've got some things that are going to give us some clearance, and I've got several other items that I think are going to be fitting for phase 2 of Recon 1. And look, if you're looking for gear and equipment to upgrade your Jeep Wrangler or Jeep Gladiator, or maybe you've got a Tacoma, check us out over at TrailRecon.com. We got all kinds of gear to outfit your vehicles for your next adventure, guys. I'm excited for this next phase, and as soon as I get back from meeting up with Sean from the Story Till Now for Bucket Trip 4, we're gonna be turning wrenches here in the garage. I'm looking forward to that, and I'm looking forward to getting this thing out and having fun. I'd love to hear what you think about how we're doing so far, guys. Until next time, safe travels.